We decided to do this talk by splitting it into description at a high level and the technical details, how it's implemented, in case someone is interested in the actual implementation details. So my vanity slide, I'm a software developer. I want to say I'm a full stack software developer, so I can touch everything and be sort of dangerous enough to break it. I'm not associated or affiliated with anything that's official. So some history about this whole theme project. So all of this started as a Python backend to a PDF generator or PDF plugin generator. It's sort of a website where you can toggle inputs and it will generate a plugin for you. That was years ago. Then at some point I decided I want to rewrite it in JavaScript, and I did that and moved the generation to be run in the front end, so you didn't need a backend anymore. Then I realized that XSLT3 has support for JSON, like native support, so you rewrite it in XSLT. Okay, and then I realized I don't really like writing the UI for it because it was more, it took more time to implement a feature and implement it in the front end than it did in the generation side. So I thought I'll just ignore the front end and focus on the generation bit and move the generation configuration to a YAML file or JSON file or something like that. I don't remember. So JSON is the primary format for the configuration, just because XSLT3 can consume JSON. That's the basic reason for it. And then YAML, from my perspective, is a convenience format because it's easy to convert JSON to YAML. YAML to JSON without losing anything. And it's also nice to type or scribble. So it's a nice perk. And then you have a question, why doesn't it have an XML syntax? Well, I forgot that XML exists. So there's no XML syntax for this. If you compare it to OpenToolkit project files that have like 3 syntaxes, XML, JSON, YAML, this only has 2. I think I'm not going to add an XML syntax because I assume no one would want that. The implementation then. So this is a code generation tool. Code generation means you generate code and then you run that generated code. And in this case, you generate XSLT, and then that XSLT is run by OpenToolkit. And what do you use to generate XSLT? You use XSLT to generate XSLT. And for some reason I find this fun. I might be the only one in the room who finds this fun. The concept of code generation. So if you go and look at the code, how this works, it's just XSLT and the output format will be XSLT. Sometimes it might be a bit tricky because you have the same element names and attribute names appearing with different namespace prefixes. One is XSL and one is AXSL. I think support for generating XSLT with XSLT has been in XSLT since 1.0. So this is nothing new, absolutely nothing new. And the XSLT that is generated, I've used XSLT really multiple times during the last minute, haven't I? Yes. So the XSLT that is generated extends PDF2 style sheets just like a traditional PDF2 plugin would. So I'm just generating the same stuff that people have been writing manually, but now you have a different way to do it. One of the things that I decided on is that I'm not going to make the code extendable. So you can't have your plugin add a functionality to the theming plugin because of this meme here. We ran into so many problems with PDF2 because we couldn't change anything afterwards because of backwards compatibility issues. So right now I have decided that there will be no backwards compatibility issues because I'm not going to allow anyone to extend it. If you want to add features, you fork the project, fork with an R, fork the project, and you do your stuff. And I'm not going to even know about it. The other option is, of course, you file feature requests, and those will be then dealt with at some point in the future. I'm going really quickly. Things that aren't there yet. One is to have these default styles that no longer use PDF2 defaults as a basis. So what would it look like? Probably something that is similar to what ASCII doctors configuration use. Mind you, I've stolen feature ideas from ASCII doctor all over. Like most of this is just stolen from ASCII doctors configuration. Oops. So you'd have extends base, and that base is a magic keyword, not a file on your local system, that would have some defaults, like the branding variables. Those would be predefined to something really boring like black and white, and those would be then used to pre-style, for example, headings. Headings are always in the primary color. And then what you do is you extend the base and just say my primary color is orange. And you don't have to go and tweak the style for heading anymore. The other one is better support for bookmap. Bookmap is more difficult because you have parts, chapters, all sorts of weird book-like things. Those work right now, but they are not pretty in all cases. And for example, our documentation, the PDF uses a bookmap. I think I suggested at some point to Roger that why don't we just use a plain map? Let's not use bookmap, but he wanted to keep the bookmap, so I have to add better support for bookmap styling. Then
you can thank me later.
Yes. So then more styles for different data elements. Right now we don't support all. We don't have support, for example, programming domain, right? Just because I haven't gotten around to it. But our documentation, for example, uses programming domain, so I suppose we should add that. So you're able to style those. Then right now, again, due to lack of time, it only supports one language per theme file. So in the configuration, you can, for example, style how xref links are shown. That you have the title and then you have the page number in brackets, for example. Or do you want to have like a P there, or C page, or on page? Things like that currently only work in one language per theme file. So I'm probably going to add support for defining multiple languages in a single theme file, just because I think it will be easier to write and manage. Then we don't have any validation of supported keys. Keys in this case are those like name of a YAML key and then there's the value. There's no validation, so you can write anything you want and it will read those things that it recognizes, but it doesn't complain about anything. So I think it should probably complain that you can't use this key, or I don't recognize this key, sort of UX type of thing. And then there's the, I think, difficult bit, which is XSLFO's start indent, which is way more difficult to think about if you compare it to CSS, like margin left. And that's something I would like to simplify somehow. I don't know how, somehow. So instead of you needing to do some start indent calculations in your theme files, you just set some key that is probably equivalent to margin left, and everything will work nicely. What else? I had something on my mind. Oh, one of the founding ideas of this whole toy is that it's not specific to OpenToolkit. So if you have your own PDF generation thing, it would be really nice if I was able to add more backends to this. So instead of it using PDF2 as a generation system, it could use CSS, HTML plus CSS to style things. You'd still write the same theme file, but the code generation that takes place generates something else. It could generate CSS. So you would be able to port some of the really simple themes across different implementations. I'm fairly certain this will never happen. The same way with OpenToolkit project files, it would be really nice if that same format was implemented by other tools like CCMS vendors, that you could configure things with those project files. So that's there. Probably not going to happen, but we'll see. I wonder what the next slide is. Thank you. So if you have any questions for Roger and myself about this, we'll be happy to answer those. Or if you want to leave for lunch and catch us later, that's okay too. Thanks.
So, any questions to start off with? Okay. Let me start by saying that this was not intended to make any of the products of our beloved sponsors obsolete. Right? I know. So, Miramo can go home safely and sleep soundly. This is not going to steal your business. Your product can do much, much more complex things than this can. Right? This is for the people that need to change the fonts and the colors and put a logo on the front page and don't know how to do that. This will solve their problems, right? Your product solves much more complex problems, so I don't think this is going to eat into your business model. If so, we don't get any cookies next year. So. Would anyone like to know more about this? Why are we here? No, John.
What was the impetus for it? I mean, were customers asking for it, or was it like me, you have an idea for something and it's just interesting on its own merit from a developer perspective? So when you say that we're using customizing the heck out of our cover pages, lots of XSLT all over the place. So divorced from the audience that this could, benefit.
Right.
That's what I'd like to understand.
The reason for this. Well, this is even on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I don't have customers, OpenToolkit as users, but I don't see those users as customers because I don't do this as a business. This was simply me doing stuff that is fun. I had a product that did something like this. He sort of validated the idea that, sure, this could work. So that's the reason for this existing. I think we see this differently, but for me it's more about just writing the code, throwing it over the fence, and then well, if someone finds it useful, I'm really happy.
I don't know if I'd say we see it differently, but we do have slightly different perspectives on it. I mean, I would say that from my perspective, one of the motivating factors for this was everyone whining for years about how hard it is to make a custom PDF for DITA output, right? And that's one of the reasons that vendors of other technologies, people that sell six-figure CMSs, use as a way of selling the product is saying hard, if you just spend 6 figures on our CMS, it'll be easy for you to get nice pretty PDFs, right? And that's one way of thinking about it. There are consultants out there who will, because people in the market, there's a marketplace perception that it's hard to create a custom PDF for DITA, will say, well, you can have a custom PDF, I will sell you one for $10,000, right? And what happens under the hood is often changing the brand colors, changing the fonts, and putting a logo on the front page. I have done this myself for clients. I have not charged them $10,000 because I just couldn't stomach that. I knew it wasn't that hard and it wasn't worth charging them that much. But I just kind of felt like, there has to be an easier way to do this when what you're trying to do is easy. And of course, none of this is going to solve the problem of I need to do some really, really arcane, crazy things with XSLT to grab some element from somewhere way, way deep in the metadata hierarchy and put it on the front page or something like that. This won't solve that problem. You need the expensive and tricky customizations still for that. But a lot of the plugin, custom PDF plugins that I was building for clients were super simple. And I just felt like it would be really, really nice if they didn't need me to do this. Brandon?
So I really like the concept of having something be easier because whenever I develop a custom plugin and hand it to my customer, I do a lot of training with them to teach them what I've done and hope that they'll be able to maintain it in the future with varying levels of success. So I like this idea. My only comment is I have never had a PDF where I did not have to customize the header or footer.
Mm-hmm.
And so is that something that is or might be possible to just work in conjunction with the out-of-the-box string files that already say we can have these 3 components in the header and footer?
Yes, sorry, this is my omission actually, Jarno.
Okay.
Very, very, very bad mistake on my part. I didn't choose to include that example in what I showed today, but it already does that. For some basic simple stuff. You may be doing more complicated things in the header and the footer than this will support.
Sure.
But Jarno does have a basic syntax here that allows you to put certain content variables in the header, and the documentation describes which ones are available, so you can put things like chapter title or other things in there in the form of a variable, and chances are if you're not doing something super unusual, you can probably make this work for your purposes.
Cool. Yeah, that's great. Normally it's like static things like fetching a string, a simple metadata value, or perhaps a logo.
Exactly, yeah, and Jarno did what I should have done all along, is just showed you the actual theme file for the docs, but this is the header and the footer section there, and Jarno has drawn our attention to the fact that the odd pages get a chapter variable in the odd headers, and the even ones get the title, which would be the, let's say, section or topic title. So in this docs PDF, it's set up so that you always have the chapter title on the left and the running section title on the right. But you can use, correct me if I'm wrong, Jarno, any of the localization variables from Toolkit can be referenced in this way, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
And in case I made anyone nervous by saying things about really expensive CMSs or consultants that charge $10,000 for a PDF plugin, you can still do that. So the good news for the good news for all of you consultants out there that earn your money this way is you can still charge $10,000 for a PDF plugin. It's just going to cost you less work, right? So if that works for your value system, you are welcome to continue doing that, and then you can sponsor DITA-OT with the extra money you earn.
So a top tip: if you run OpenToolkit with the theme parameter, and then you don't delete the temporary directory, you set clean.temp to no. And then you go into the temporary directory. The generated code is there, and you can basically copy paste it into a custom plugin and use it as a basis. I haven't implemented support where it's sort of, there would be a trans type called plugin that would take the theme and convert it into a plugin in the output directory, and that would be your plugin code. I haven't done that because at this stage I think it's not needed, but it sort of can be done if someone needs it. Done?
Done? Done? Ask audience? Done? Any other ideas?
Yes, thank you.
Done. Lunchtime. Thank you.